Hello, my name is Alissa Presentation. My candidate number is currently unknown, and this is my formal presentation for higher level IB film studies. Today I will be discussing the 1950s thriller film Night of the Hunter, directed by Charles Laughton. Charles Laughton was the director of the film, and although he was successful with his previous films, such as White Woman and Mutiny on the Bounty, The Night of the Hunter was a critical and box office failure after its initial release, and was the last film that he directed. This was due to the fact that critics viewed the film negatively, making the film unsuccessful and consequently damaging his reputation. However, as the film aged, it gained a wide audience, possibly because it has almost become a historical document that is more informative than entertaining, as it gives an insight into 1950s West Virginia. One of the main themes throughout both the film and the clip that I have chosen is the theme of adult empowerment and the insignificance of children and their ideas. I would say that the director's intention with this was to create the effect of opposition within the audience, making the film more relatable to a wider variety of people, while still keeping the controversy that intrigues the audience. I would say that he decided to stick with the theme of adult empowerment, as it meant that the audience could understand what it felt like to be oppressed, because there is no nation in the world, there is no person in this world that has not at some point in their life or another felt oppressed by some sort of law, and this makes it more relatable to everyone, not just adults or children or the elderly. It makes it relatable to all of them. And the insignificance of children does this as well, because I can almost guarantee that everybody I know has felt insignificant at some point in their life. The film that I've chosen is a thriller film, and we can see this through the narrative of the film, as the use of Todorov's theory of equilibriums allows for the audience to see the suspense and tension building between the characters as the story progresses and the equilibrium is disrupted. This allows for the audience to become more involved as they understand the film better and are further intrigued. The fact that they get to know the characters as the story develops, and the fact that they know them as the equilibrium breaks, means that they are more related to the characters and have this almost relationship with them. The use of hard light in the film effectively creates shadows and means that it conforms to the conventions of a thriller, as it creates a tense atmosphere through allowing the audience to see the darker side of the character and the setting. This is done in the scene that I chose when Harry turned on the light at the end, and the use of the light bulb as the single source of light meant that the shadows were clearly defined and alerted the audience to the fact that his dark side was about to be revealed, further increasing the tension of the scene. The director's intention was to conform to the thriller genre through the use of black and white colour throughout the entire film, as it meant that the film had a more intense nature and allowed for the audience to be forced to notice that the binary oppositions that were present during the film. It also meant that the audience was more aware of the juxtaposition, as they saw a visual representation of the differences between the characters and were further aware of how they affected the plot. The fact that the film portrays children as being vulnerable and weak means that it would not appeal to the target audience of American families, which was the intended audience, as they would find that it is too realistic and horrific for them to face. The idea that a child is susceptible to violence and abuse makes it too realistic to the post-war era in which the film was set, meaning that the film painted an accurate representation of 1950s America, causing a lack of interest from the target audience, and therefore making it a failure. The Night of the Hunter was set in the 1950s, a time in which religion was considered very important in West Virginia, the setting of the film, which is included in the Bible Belt of America. As a result of this, the film would have been poorly received due to the offensive portrayal of something that the target audience considered to be as being prestigious in their society, consequently explaining why the film was so unsuccessful. The director's intention was to break the stereotypes that surrounded religion at that time, and continue to surround religion now to a much lesser extent. He did this through portraying religion in a negative light, as a bad thing that is completely corrupt and could be almost called toxic to the community and all of those who follow it. This would have been one of the main factors in the poor receival of the film, and it would also be a reason why now it is so much more accepted, because our society has become much more aware of these problems and is aware that just because someone is religion, it doesn't mean that they're a good person. The director's intention was to show Strauss's theory of binary oppositions through the juxtaposition between the elderly and the young people, like at the start of the clip that I chose, when it shows both John and Uncle Birdie in the same scene and how they have different approaches to different scenarios, like how they react to the boat being finished. Showing the different generations in this way makes the film more interesting, as it means that the audience gets to understand the dynamics of their lives and the way that different characters react. It also emphasises their relationship and the importance of different opinions. The director also shows binary oppositions through the juxtaposition between genders and gender stereotypes. He does this through Willa and Harry as he shows them in the bedroom on their honeymoon and the opposite expectations of how the night will go. The director chose to do this in order to make the film more realistic, but also keep the controversy that has stuck throughout the entire film, as it means that the audience will be able to relate, as these stereotypes are there for a reason, and they are true to an extent, but they will also be offended and will be more intrigued by the film as they question whether it's true and why the director actually chose to do this. The director's intention with the scene that I chose from the film was to show the audience the full plot in a clear and efficient way, allowing the audience to fully connect with the characters as they have a better understanding of the events that are occurring and the effect this has on the characters. This is then furthered by the use of an omniscient linear chronological structure that allows us to see the characters develop and lets the audience gain a better understanding of the characters' intention and motives, giving the film a more powerful effect as the audience feel more connected to the characters and the story. The director purposely chose to break Todorov's theory of equilibrium through deciding not to return to the equilibrium at the end of the scene. Instead, he decided at the end of the scene to end the scene with the harsh realization of Harry's true nature. He did this because it meant that the audience was intrigued by it and would be anxious to find out the result of this realization. Doing this also increased tension within the audience, resulting in them being more aware of the situation and excited to find out how it ends. Propp's character stereotypes were shown mainly through the use of the preacher as the villain. This director chose to do this as it meant that the story is more emphasised and dramatic to the audience, making it more interesting, as they don't want to see a film about everyday life that they can, because they could see that anywhere. This is designed to entertain them and to take them to a place that isn't realistic. Economically speaking, the film had a fairly average budget for the era it was set in. It was made, sorry. But its initial gross was much, much less than expected, and it was much less than its official gross now, which is over $48 million. This would have been because, like I said earlier, it was too realistic for them and wasn't well received both critically and just publicly. So the clip I have chosen is a 5-minute sequence from 24 to 29 minutes into the film. In this sequence, we see John with Uncle Birdie talking about the boat. We then see John return home to a seemingly empty house where he finds Harry Powell. They then have a discussion that involves the topic of the money and the announcement of Harry and Willa's wedding. Towards the end of the sequence, we see Willa as she gets ready for her first night of marriage with her husband, and we see Harry's very blatant rejection of her and how he reprimands her for lusting. I have chosen this extract as it successfully portrays the themes that I explained earlier and also allows for a uniquely rounded insight into the world of the characters. The clip that I've chosen relates to the rest of the film in the sense that it is quite a central scene, as it is the moment that things truly begin to go bad for the protagonist. It subtly shows the problems and allows for the audience to be slowly introduced to the idea that things are going to get much worse, while simultaneously allowing them to develop a relationship with the protagonist. I thought that the editing in the clip I chose was very interesting, as it was used effectively through a shot that lasted 24 seconds, which is designed to make the audience feel uneasy and nervous, as it doesn't feel natural to follow him like that and to stay so focused on him from one perspective. This means that when he returns to an empty house, there is a much greater effect on the audience due to the tension that is built from us following him like this. The sound in this scene is quite effective, as the happy tempo and rhythm of the music that is being played by Uncle Birdie is contrapuntal to John's attitude, but parallel to Uncle Birdie's attitude, therefore emphasising the disparity between the two characters and allowing the audience to fully understand the nature of the characters and their relationship to each other. The only sound we hear in the shot at the end of the scene is the light switching on and Harry saying, "Get up, Willa." This gives the scene an ominous feel, as it means that we are completely focused on what he is saying, and causes us to think about all of the possible scenarios that could follow it, therefore increasing the tension and anxiety within the audience. There is an active prop used towards the beginning of the scene by Uncle Birdie as he plays the banjo. The banjo tends to have happy connotations, as it is a positive and upbeat sound with upbeat rhythms and tempos and things. This emphasises the positive nature of his mood and outlook on life, while symbolising his personality and allowing the audience to understand the relevance of his character more in depth. The use of hard key lighting on Uncle Birdie to create harsh shadows allows the audience to see the juxtaposition between the mood set by the props and the lighting, giving them a sense of unease, as the shadows are a darker side to Uncle Birdie's personality, and foreshadows the fact that later in the film there will be negative scenarios related to Uncle Birdie, therefore making them uneasy and unsure of how to feel with regards to him. The use of an inactive prop, such as a lamppost, symbolises a disruptive nature due to the fire in it. Fire tends to have connotations of hell and natural disasters that inform the audience subtly and subconsciously that something is going to go wrong, and warns them that everything isn't as easy as it seems. And the lighting from the lamppost as the main source of light draws focus and casts shadows, giving the entire scene a sinister nature with an almost evil intent. Towards the beginning of the scene is a shot of John under the boat whilst the boat is upside down. We see the lower half of John's body and we see Uncle Birdie in the background. This expresses how the importance of the boat in their life and foreshadows the significance, as it is the focus of the shot. The fact that we are able to see all of Uncle Birdie means that the audience understands his importance, as well as being forced to focus on him and his body language as the only way to gauge the nature of the scene. During the scene where John returns home to a house that at first appears empty, there are several interesting shots used. For example, we see John walking into frame from a distance. As he walks towards the camera then tracks him as he moves to pass it and ends focusing on John in the right of the frame, and Willa and Icy through a window in the centre left of the shot. John then walks out of the shot to the left. This shot type allows the audience to gain a better understanding of John's emotions towards each of the characters and to see how he responds to them, allowing them to become more involved in the story as they see all of his reactions and relationships with them. There is a side-on mid-shot of Harry as he is telling Willa to get up at the end of the scene. In this shot, he turns the light on, and the effect is meant to emphasise the fact that he is supposedly a man of God as he is surrounded by the light. However, the light also emphasises the shadows, showing that he has a hidden dark side that others wouldn't normally see. Finally, for my critical analysis, I read an article from The Telegraph written by David Gritton, which gives an inspiring analysis of the film as it discusses the film's initial failure and later developed success. Describing the film as originally being shunned by audiences and scorned by most critics, it reveals to us that the film was not well received at first, which we now assume is due to the horrific yet realistic nature of the film, which meant that the audience could relate to the film and were made to feel uncomfortable with the taboos that it broke. However, the article then goes on to discuss how the film later became a masterpiece of American cinema, showing that as time progressed the film was better received and was accepted by a much wider audience due to the fact that it was no longer relevant to the current situation. I think that the fact this article was written in 2014, which was 59 years after the original release and 15 years after the re-release date, meant that he had a more open opinion of the film and was therefore in a less biased position to judge it as well. If he had been born in a time when the problems were still taboo and common in society, then he would have had different opinions, as he would have been much more sensitive to the topics involved in the film. Gritton also goes on to state that the director chooses to give the film an expressionistic look through the lighting that is used, as it meant that he could conform to genre conventions of a thriller. The use of oblique angles and long shadows meant that stylistically it was a throwback to 30 years before. Gritton states this in such a fashion that it causes us to think about the fact that the film was done in this way to allow the audience to understand how things were within the society and how things have changed, and to be able to see the disparity between the two settings. Thank you for listening to my presentation.